The sun was setting over the Silicon Valley skyline, painting the glass facades of tech companies in brilliant orange and gold. I stood at my office window at Google's Mountain View campus, taking in the view I'd grown to love over the past decade. My phone buzzed, another birthday wish from a colleague. 40 years old today. I should have been feeling on top of the world. The promotion to senior engineering manager had just come through last week. Our stock options were vesting nicely. The twins were thriving in their prestigious private school. And Sarah, my wife of 10 years, was supposed to be planning something special for tonight. At least, that's what Emma, our daughter, had hinted at breakfast with a conspiratorial giggle. I smiled, thinking of our 8-year-old twins, Emma and Ethan. They were the reason I pushed myself so hard, the reason I climbed the corporate ladder with such determination. Gathering my things, I headed to my Tesla, ready to head home. The drive through Palo Alto was smooth, traffic surprisingly light for a Thursday evening. Our house came into view, a modern 4-bedroom in one of the city's most sought-after neighborhoods. The kind of place where tech executives and startup founders live side by side, comparing Tesla models and discussing their latest series of funding. I pulled into our driveway, noticing Sarah's Lexus already parked. Usually, she'd be busy with the kids' after-school activities at this hour. The front door opened before I could reach for my keys. "Daddy!" Emma and Ethan burst out, their faces glowing with excitement. I scooped them both up in a big hug, breathing in their familiar scent of shampoo and childhood. "Happy birthday, Dad," they chorused, squeezing me tight. "Thanks, Munchkins," I laughed, setting them down gently. That's when I saw Sarah standing in the doorway. Something about her appearance made me pause. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, deep red, fitted, more suited to a cocktail party than a family dinner. Her dark hair was styled differently too, falling in loose waves around her shoulders. "Happy birthday, David," she said, her voice carrying an unfamiliar note. I stepped forward to kiss her, but she turned slightly, my lips catching her cheek instead. The kids didn't notice the awkward moment, already pulling me inside toward the dining room. "Mom made your favorite," Ethan announced proudly. The table was set beautifully, with my favorite grilled salmon and roasted vegetables arranged perfectly on plates. But something felt off. Sarah kept checking her phone throughout dinner, her fingers tapping rapid responses to messages. She barely touched her food, and when she did speak, her words seemed rehearsed, hollow. The kids chattered away, oblivious to the tension building between their parents. After dinner, Sarah surprised me by announcing she'd arranged for our regular sitter to watch the kids. "I have a eel surprise planned," she said, that strange note still in her voice. "Just let me get changed first." I hugged the twins goodnight, promising extra pancakes for breakfast. As I waited for Sarah in our living room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The sitter, Jenny, arrived right on schedule, her familiar presence usually reassuring. But tonight, even her cheerful greeting couldn't dispel my unease. Sarah emerged from our bedroom, wearing the red dress from dinner. Her makeup was darker now, more dramatic. She grabbed her keys, motioning for me to follow. "I'm driving," she announced, brooking no argument. The night air had grown cool as we got in her Lexus. Sarah pulled out of our driveway with purpose, heading away from downtown. "Where are we going?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "You'll see," she replied, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. We drove in silence, the only sound the soft purr of the engine and the occasional ping of her phone. The buildings grew sparse as we left the heart of Silicon Valley behind. Eventually, she turned onto a poorly lit street lined with abandoned warehouses. My tech industry instincts recognized the area. This was where failed startups came to die. She pulled up to a particularly dark building, killing the engine. "Sarah, what is this place?" She turned to me then, and in the dim light, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Something cold, calculating, Your surprise, she said softly, opening her door. Every instinct told me to stay in the car, to demand we go home. But 10 years of marriage, of trust, made me follow her toward the building's entrance. She produced a key from her purse, unlocking a heavy metal door. The interior was dark, musty. Our footsteps echoed on concrete floors as she led me down a corridor. Sarah, seriously, what's going on? She stopped at another door, her hand resting on the handle. You know, David, she said, her voice eerily calm, I've been planning this for a very long time. Before I could process her words, she pushed open the door. The room beyond was dimly lit by a single bulb. 3 men stood waiting, their faces hard, their intentions clear. I barely had time to register the danger before the first blow caught me in the stomach. As I doubled over, gasping for breath, I heard Sarah's voice, cold and distant. Happy birthday, darling. The second punch caught me in the jaw, sending me staggering backward. Through the haze of pain, I saw Sarah watching, a small smile playing on her lips. 10 years, she said, pacing slowly around the room. 10 years of playing the perfect Silicon Valley wife. Another blow, this time to my ribs. 10 years of pretending to be impressed by your coding stories, your startup investments, your tech bubble success. I tried to speak, to understand, but a fist to my face silenced me. Blood filled my mouth, hot and metallic. You never saw me, D. Avid. Not really. The men continued their assault, methodical and brutal. You saw what you wanted to see, the supportive wife, the devoted mother. I fell to my knees, my body screaming in pain, but I was dying inside, suffocating in your perfect little world. Through swollen eyes, I watched her approach, her red dress a blur of color in the dim light. So, I decided to make some changes. She knelt beside me, her perfume mixing with the copper scent of blood. Big changes. The beating paused, leaving me gasping on the concrete floor. Why? I managed to choke out. Sarah laughed, the sound echoing off the walls. Because I could, she whispered. Because you never thought I would. She stood, smoothing her dress. The kids will be fine with Jenny until I get home. Home. The word hit me harder than any punch. Our home. Our children. Our life. Something snapped inside me. Years of early morning workouts in the Google gym hadn't been just for show. As one of the men reached for me again, I exploded upward. My fist connected with his jaw, the impact jarring my arm. He stumbled backward, surprise replacing his smug expression. The second man came at me, but adrenaline and rage made me faster. I ducked his swing, driving my shoulder into his midsection. We crashed into the wall, the impact knocking the wind from him. The third man pulled something from his pocket, metal glinting in the dim light. But I was beyond fear now. I caught his wrist as he swung the knife, twisting until I heard bones crack. He screamed, the weapon clattering to the floor. The first man had recovered, charging at me with a roar. I met his rush with a punch to the throat, dropping him to his knees. Through it all, Sarah stood watching, her expression shifting from satisfaction to disbelief. When the last man fell, she backed toward the door. This isn't how it was supposed to go, she said, her voice shaking. I took a step toward her, tasting blood. She turned and ran, her heels clicking on the concrete. I tried to follow, but my battered body wouldn't cooperate. By the time I made it to the parking lot, her Lexus was gone. My hands shaking, I pulled out my phone. First, I called 911. Then I called Jenny. Don't let Sarah take the kids, I said, my voice raw. Don't let her in the house. The police arrived within minutes, their sirens painting the night in red and blue. As paramedics checked my injuries, I gave my statement to a detective named Rodriguez. He listened carefully, his expression growing darker with each detail. We'll find her, Mr. Thompson, he promised. But all I could think about was getting home to Emma and Ethan. about protecting them from the stranger their mother had become, about the long night ahead and the even longer days to come. The life I thought I knew had shattered like a dropped iPhone screen. And like broken glass, I knew the pieces would never fit back together the same way and the hospital lights were harsh and unforgiving as doctors patched me up. 3 broken ribs, a fractured jaw, and enough bruises to make me look like a failed art project. Detective Rodriguez stayed with me, his notebook open, asking questions I barely had energy to answer. How long had Sarah been acting strange? Were there any signs? Did she have access to significant funds? I answered mechanically, my mind still with Emma and Ethan at home. Jenny had texted updates every 15 minutes. The kids were asleep, unaware their world was crumbling. The police had posted officers outside our house. Mr. Thompson, Rodriguez said, pulling me from my thoughts. We need to discuss your wife's recent activities. He showed me his tablet, revealing bank transfers I'd never seen before. Large sums moved to accounts I didn't recognize. She's been planning this for months, he explained. Maybe longer. My tech background kicked in, and I started thinking like a system administrator tracking a security breach. I need access to her email, I said. Her cloud storage, social media. Rodriguez nodded, making notes. We'll get warrants, but given the circumstances, I was already pulling out my phone, fingers flying over the screen. Sarah had always been careless with her passwords, using them on shared devices, letting them autofill. Within minutes, I was in her Google account. What I found made me sick. Emails to divorce lawyers dating back 6 months. Messages on encrypted platforms to people planning special services. Photos of our house, our routines, our security system. She documented everything, planned every detail. There's more, Rodriguez said quietly. He showed me surveillance footage from various hotels around the valley. Sarah, entering rooms with different men. Dates matching times she'd said she was at yoga, or shopping, or having lunch with friends. The betrayal went deeper than I'd imagined. Morning came too quickly, bringing with it the harsh reality of what needed to be done. I called our family lawyer, Howard Klein, at 6 a.m. Jesus Christ, David, he said when I explained the situation. I'm on my way. The kids woke up as Jenny was making breakfast. I cleaned up as best I could, but there was no hiding the bruises. Daddy, what happened to your face? Emma asked, her eyes wide with concern. Just a little accident, sweetheart. I lied, hating myself for it. Where's your brother? Still sleeping, she said. When's Mom coming home? The question hit me like another punch to the gut. How do you tell an 8-year-old that her mother tried to have her father killed? That the woman who tucked her in at night was a stranger? Howard arrived as I was trying to figure out what to say. He took one look at my face and went straight into action mode. We need to file emergency custody orders, he said, pulling out his laptop. Freeze all joint accounts. Lock down every T. Ing. I nodded, already thinking 10 steps ahead like I did with product launches. I want full custody, I said. She's not getting near them. The day became a blur of legal documents and police interviews. Rodriguez's team found Sarah's Lexus abandoned at San Jose International Airport. Security cameras showed her boarding a flight to Mexico City. She won't get far, Rodriguez assured me. We've flagged her passport, but I wasn't taking chances. I called in every favor I had in the tech community. Former colleagues now at social media companies, friends at financial institutions, people who owed me from various startup ventures. By afternoon, Sarah's digital life was locked down tight. Her credit cards canceled, her social media accounts frozen, her email blocked. I had become the administrator of her personal firewall, and I was blacklisting everything. The kids spent the day with Jenny, who was worth her weight in gold. She kept them distracted with games and movies while their world changed forever. Howard worked his legal magic, getting emergency orders signed by a judge he knew. She can't touch the kids, he confirmed. Can't access any accounts. Can't come near the house. But the hardest part was still to come. That evening, I had to tell Emma and Ethan that their mother wasn't coming home. I sat them down in our living room, their small faces trusting and innocent. Something's happened. I began, my heart breaking. Mom has gone away for a while. Like on a business trip? Ethan asked. No, buddy. It's it's more complicated than that. Emma, always the more perceptive one, took my hand. Is that why your face is hurt? She whispered. I pulled them both close, feeling their warmth against my battered ribs. Yes, sweetheart. Mom? Mom did some bad things. Is she coming back? Ethan's voice trembled. I don't know, I answered honestly. But I promise you both something. They looked up at me, their eyes full of tears and trust. I will always be here, always protect you, no matter what. They clung to me then, crying softly. I held them until they fell asleep, their small bodies heavy with exhaustion. After carrying them to bed, I sat in my home office, staring at screens full of data. Sarah's digital footprint told a story of careful planning and cold calculation. She'd researched everything: divorce laws, offshore accounts, private investigators. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. In the tech world, we had a saying, information wants to be free. But information could also be weaponized. As I dug deeper into her online life, I found more than just betrayal. I found ammunition. Sarah had secrets she'd tried to bury, conversations that would destroy her reputation in our social circle, financial transactions that would interest the IRS, photos that would devastate her family. A dark part of me wanted to release it all, to watch her world burn from afar. But I thought of Emma and Ethan sleeping upstairs. They'd already lost their mother. They didn't need to see her destroyed as well. Not yet. Anyway, I saved everything to encrypted drives, building my arsenal carefully. Sarah would surface eventually. And when she did, I would be ready. The next few days passed in a haze of legal meetings and police updates. Sarah had vanished in Mexico City, her trail going cold. But I knew she wouldn't stay hidden forever. She'd want to see the kids, try to explain her side of the story, maybe even attempt to take them. I upgraded our home security system, added cameras, motion sensors, facial recognition, changed all the locks, added biometric scanners. Our house became a fortress, protecting the only things that mattered anymore. The media caught wind of the story. It was too juicy to ignore. Silicon Valley executive's wife plots murder. Tech dream turns nightmare. Google manager survives murder attempt by spouse. I ignored the headlines, focused on keeping the kids' routine as normal as possible. School, activities, homework. Jenny stayed with us full-time now, becoming the stable female presence they needed. But at night, when the house was quiet, I would sit at my computers, watching, waiting, planning. Sarah had taught me something valuable. Revenge was a dish best served digitally. And I was very, very good at digital. A month passed, then two. The bruises faded, but the scars inside grew deeper. Detective Rodriguez called one morning as I was getting the kids ready for school. We found her, he said without preamble. My heart stopped for a moment. Where? Reno. Trying to withdraw cash from a casino ATM. I sat down heavily in my office chair. She's in custody now, he continued, being transported back to California. The kids' laughter echoed from the kitchen where Jenny was making breakfast. Does she still have rights to see them? I asked, my voice tight. That's up to the courts, Rodriguez replied. But given the circumstances, I ended the call and stared at my screens. It was time to execute the plan I'd been building. First, I called Howard. She's back, I said. I want to destroy her in court. Howard didn't hesitate. I've got everything ready. She won't know what hit her. The preliminary hearing was set for the following week. I made sure the kids were safely away, sending them to stay with my parents in Seattle. The courthouse was packed. Our story had become Silicon Valley legend. Sarah was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her designer clothes and perfect makeup gone. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. But when she saw me, her eyes still held that cold fire. I had prepared myself for this moment, but seeing her again hit harder than expected. Howard was brilliant, methodically presenting evidence of her planning. The bank transfers, the dark web contacts, the hotel footage. Each revelation seemed to shrink her further into her chair. When it was her lawyer's turn, he tried to paint her as a victim, trapped in a loveless marriage, suffering from depression, pushed to desperate measures. I almost laughed at the irony. The judge wasn't buying it. Sarah was denied bail, deemed a flight risk. But the criminal case was just the beginning. I had something much worse planned. That evening, I initiated phase 2. A carefully crafted email went out to our entire social circle. Not from me. I was smarter than that. It came from one of Sarah's old friends, someone she'd betrayed years ago. The email contained select pieces of evidence. Photos of her with other men, screenshots of her planning my murder, bank statements showing stolen money. Within hours, her carefully constructed social world imploded. Friends recoiled in horror. Country club memberships were revoked. Charity boards asked her to step down. Her family stopped defending her. The next day, anonymous tips reached the IRS. Questions about unreported income, suspicious transactions, offshore accounts. The financial noose began to tighten. Howard called with updates from the divorce proceedings. "She's trying to claim half of everything," he said. "Not anymore," I replied, sending him new evidence. Proof that she'd violated our prenup. Documentation of hidden assets. Records of her embezzling from our joint accounts. The judge's ruling was swift and brutal. Sarah lost everything. The house, the cars, access to our stock portfolio. Most importantly, she lost any chance of custody. The kids would stay with me. She would get supervised visits only, if I allowed them. Through it all, I maintained my professional facade. At Google, I was still the same efficient manager. In public, I was the wrong but dignified husband. Only at night, alone with my screens, did I allow myself to smile. The criminal trial was almost anticlimactic. Sarah's lawyer advised her to plead guilty. The evidence was too overwhelming. The sentence came down, 15 years. No possibility of early parole. As they led her away, she looked back at me one last time. I saw something new in her eyes now. Understanding. She finally realized what I'd done. How completely I'd destroyed her. Not with violence or threats, but with information. Data. The very thing she'd thought I was too absorbed in to notice her betrayal. Months turned into a year. The kids adjusted slowly. Therapy helped. Jenny became a permanent part of our household. My parents moved closer to help. Life developed new routines. But sometimes late at night, I would sit in my office, staring at the screens that had helped me execute my revenge, wondering if it had been worth it, if destroying Sarah had somehow destroyed part of me too. The kids never asked about her anymore. Her photos were gone from our walls. Her name wasn't spoken in our house. She had become a ghost, haunting only the digital realm where I'd banished her. One evening, Emma found me in my office. "Dad," she said softly, "are you okay?" I turned from my screens, looking at my daughter. She was growing so fast, looking more like Sarah every day. But her eyes were different, warmer. "Kinda." "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into a hug. "Just thinking." She hugged me back, then looked at my monitors. "You don't have to watch her anymore," she said quietly. "She can't hurt us now." Out of the mouths of babes. I looked at my screens, still running programs tracking Sarah's prison communications, still monitoring her diminishing digital footprint, still maintaining the walls I'd built around our lives. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe it was time to let go. Not of the pain or the betrayal, Those would always be part of me now. But of the need to keep punishing Sarah. She was already serving multiple sentences. The one the court gave her, the one society gave her, and the one I had engineered. I reached over and began closing programs, shutting down monitoring systems, turning off alerts. Emma watched silently, understanding more than a child should. When the last screen went dark, she took my hand. "Can we have ice cream?" she asked. I smiled, standing up. "Yes," I said. "We can have ice cream." We walked out of my office, leaving the darkness behind. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, there would be ice cream. And maybe, just maybe, a chance to start healing. And